newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. My guest today is Blaire Brown, and as many of you know, on this show, we talk about how we got from A and how we're going to reach Z. And you know what? It doesn't make any difference if we reach it or not. It's how we live each day. So, Blaire, thank you for joining us on New Cleveland Radio and Avoid the Maze. And give us a little bit of background. Looks like we're
So
having.
excited to be talking to you.
Yeah.
A little bit about me is I'm the founder of a brand strategy group, and what we do is we help businesses increase their visibility through marketing and branding. And I also help entrepreneurs, aspiring and new entrepreneurs, get started on their path to entrepreneurship so that they can actually go after and fulfill that freedom-filled life that they've been looking for.
So, what drew you to this kind of career? Because so many of us, when we're younger, when we think of a career, it's teacher, lawyer, firefighter.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about helping somebody brand themselves.
Yeah, that's a great question because I didn't think I'd be here either. You know, if you want to tell God a joke, tell him your plans. If things just get, it's funny when you look back at how things go in the course of your life and how it turns out, and it's usually unexpected. But when I was younger, I always wanted to be in the fashion industry, and so my first business was actually creating and selling handbags. And I was 16 years old, and I went to my parents and I said, "Hey, well, first off, everybody at school was carrying, bags that were very expensive, Louis Vuitton, Coach bags. I mean, I was 16. Who can afford that?"
Right.
And so I have always been sewing, and I decided to make my own. And so it really took off. People loved it. They started asking me where I got my bags, teachers, students, random people at Starbucks, like, strangers. And I thought this could actually be something. And so I asked my parents, can I borrow $300 and go to Joann's fabric store? I want to go start a purse business. And they're like, yes, absolutely. And I ended up running that business for 8 years, and it was
Wow.
very successful. It was featured on Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's website at one point. I think I was 18 at that point. And then I thought, you know what? I'm not tired of this. I think I'm gonna pursue this in college, in my career path. I thought I'm gonna have a brick and mortar shop eventually, like, that's what my life is gonna be.
Sure.
So I did go into fashion. I went to fashion school in New York, and on the business side of things, I continued running the business out of my dorm room for years. And then over time, I realized, okay, if I really want to make this a sustainable income, I don't know if I have the tools just yet. And so I kind of put on the back burner and I went into the corporate world of fashion. So I still followed the fashion industry, but that's how I got into marketing and branding, because you have to do that if you're an entrepreneur, right? Because
Right.
how do you sell it? But then, learning more in the New York fashion world was like a huge springboard into opening my eyes of what else you can do. So I did that for several years in different capacities across many different brands. And then I always had this tapping on my heart saying, this is a great job, but I'm not happy. What else is there? And I couldn't figure it out for a while. And then I realized I'm just an entrepreneur. Like, I can't even help it, So I started a business with my mom, on Amazon FBA. And are you familiar with Amazon FBA?
No, I'm not. So tell our listeners what it is.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but Amazon's so smart. They have a million different, avenues to make
Right.
money. So another one is they give access to people like you and me to sell our product as a prime product on Amazon. So the way it works is we're basically the middleman between manufacturing process and getting it all created, and then you contact Amazon, make sure it's all good to go. They tell you where to ship the product. So if you're shipping from like China or India, it's nice to not have hundreds of products in your apartment or home,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And having to deal with the packing, picking, shipping customer service. Amazon handles it for you, which is great. So we did that and we sold unicorn party supplies because we're like, that's always trending with kids, right?
Right.
So I marketed it and we sold out of the product and it was great, but it wasn't quite what we wanted as far as like long-term goals. And so at the same time, I was still working at my corporate fashion job. And so finally, it just took, we put that on the back burner and I was like, you know what? I don't know what route I'm going to go in, but I'm just gonna pursue entrepreneurship full time. I'd always been bartending, like, in between jobs, like, through college, and I just was like, "I'm gonna leave this job, and I'm gonna bartend, and I'm gonna just figure it out." And so, I did. 6 months later, I realized how much of a need there was in the industry across all small business owners. They need marketing help because
Right.
a lot of people hate it, and in fact, their voice even changes when they talk about marketing. They're like, "Oh, I really just hate marketing." And I'm like, "Really? I love it." For me, it's very second nature, and when I realized that it's not second nature for every business owner, I was like, "Okay, well, this is where I can fill in the blanks and help entrepreneurs," and I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship. I get the struggles that they go through, and I also know a lot of hacks along the way, so I can help them in many different capacities, whether it's branding or marketing, and so that's really when I realized this is really what I'm supposed to do. I've had the businesses I've started. This is my third one now. I've made the mistakes. Now I know how to avoid those and to cut the time in half. So if I can help people cut that time in half, my heart is super full.
Well, and it's interesting. At age 16, you found a art form, so to
Mhm.
speak,
Yeah.
and you developed it. And so many of us have that little niche that we can be creative in. But we hear these voices in the back. You're not going to be successful. Don't
Mhm.
make a fool of yourself. Go for that solid education.
Yeah.
The problem is that if our heart is into something else, that education can be very difficult for some.
Mhm.
And then you're, spending all this money on a degree and you're sitting
Mhm.
around going, what do I do?
Yeah.
And for so many of us, especially in the baby boomer age, um, we didn't follow our passions because we were told, you got to go make that paycheck, and on the
Mhm.
weekends you can have a little bit of fun.
Right.
Um, so I really appreciate individuals who look around and say, let me do what I'm good at doing. And
Mhm.
I would love to see our educational system and our business format follow along
Yeah, me
because
too.
we have a lot happier people in our society
Mhm.
doing the things that they are good at.
Mhm.
So, when you went into business with your mom, here you've been in business basically on your own for a while. What was
Mhm.
it like going into partnership and especially with a parent?
I am extremely fortunate because my mom is truly the best. And we have a great friendship and it just made sense for us because we work super well together and what person can you trust more than a parent? For me, I'm very fortunate for that. And so when I was working my corporate job, she also had a job too at full time. But the timing of being able to kind of tag team different tasks and our different skill sets in various areas were very complementary and so that we were able to partner super well on that. And it was also a learning curve for both of us because try doing manufacturing in China when you've never done that personally. Like I've done it in corporate world, but that was completely different than
Right.
building a whole new product on your own and, really hoping that it takes off. So it was definitely a learning curve, but I think working together, we did a great job. And it was really fun because, I'd get off work at my other job or I'd be texting her during it. Don't tell, even though we're here. Um, and we just be figuring out, and we were so determined. We're like, only 3% of people going into Amazon FBA actually make it onto the platform, and so as we did it, I was like, "Mom, we're in the top 3%, look at us," you know, like, we're just building each other up the whole time and making sure it worked, and, so it did make it on the platform, and we did sell out of the product, so we're very proud of that, but, yeah, most people would wonder if partnering with your mom would be hard, but I'm very fortunate with mine.
Well, it's very interesting because my youngest son, for his internship for his business degree, the college that he was going at just didn't know where to put him, and
Mhm.
he's very much sports and music minded. They had no connections, and they finally connected him with internet radio. And so he did his internship with internet radio. And not only did he learn how to broadcast, but he also learned how to find sponsors and
Smart.
connections. And uh,
Awesome.
when he was graduating, I looked at him and I said, communications has been my area my whole life.
Mhm.
I had also gone back to school to get my master's, and I said, so here you are on the radio. That's been my dream
Mhm.
for 30 plus years. I said, you know what? I'm going to start some sort of internet podcasting. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? He said, you know, there's too many already out there. So I went to the people that he was broadcasting for and I said, okay, I have an idea for a show. I would like to do it. And they looked at me and they said, sure, we'll give you a time slot. You go for it. A couple of years later, my son was flauntering, not sure what he wanted to do. And I said, you know what? How about if dad and I set you up and you can call it whatever you want? And I know you love sports. You do the sports side, I'll do the other side. And we've been working together since.
I
Um,
love that.
and even though we are totally separate,
Mhm.
we are together because, if I go to make a decision, I'm bringing on a new client on the podcast, I'll sit down and talk to him about it. And there have been a couple of times he'll say to me, I don't think so. And we'll talk about it. And typically he's right. He can read people. Um, so I understand that connection of
Mhm.
parent uh, and child because when you're working together, you are not parent and child anymore. You are
Mhm.
two entities working um, on a business and building
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So, in addition to your entrepreneurship, you are now out there coaching others.
Mhm.
How did that all get developed?
Well, it's funny because again, I just didn't realize that people needed marketing help so much, and then whenever I realized, wow, I'm actually really good at this. You know what I mean? Like, when you're starting something, it takes a lot of, it takes a while for you to get comfortable realizing
Absolutely.
that, I'd say, and then once I realized I have this experience and gift that I can share with other people and help them take them from the position that I was in where I truly had a picture perfect job in fashion. Um, but to be so unhappy in that position was like crazy to me in my head. I was like, how is this even possible? And is this what we're supposed to be doing for the next, 40 plus years until we quote unquote retire? Like, is this gonna be it? And so that was my thought. And then when I realized I can start my own business and be very successful running that, let me help other people do the same transition because I've like cracked the code, so to speak. Um, and I understand where they're coming from. So really that transition was just like realizing it's doable, right? And that it again, it's just super fulfilling to take people from the position I was in and then getting them out of that rut.
So, how do you take somebody who says, I really know what I want to do in my business, but oh, I don't want to market it. I don't want to think about those things. I don't want to have to spend the money. And I've heard this over and over again. It's like,
Same.
I just want to do what I want to do.
Mhm.
But if you do that, you're not going to grow
No.
because you've got to let people know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you also have to make sure that you're fitting at least a niche, because if you're only filling your own, nobody's going to buy from you, listen to you. So, how do you get somebody out of that rut who says, I don't want to do all this stuff?
I say you gotta get over it. Because you do, like, part of entrepreneurship and is doing a lot of uncomfortable things every single day, and honestly, over time, once you get started, you're like, "Ugh, this is uncomfortable. I gotta do it." You really strengthen those muscles. You get over it, you truly do, believe it or not, and then you start getting more comfortable with these things, but then also, if I can help them build it up to a position, because most entrepreneurs don't start out with a lot of money, like, typically, it takes time to get to that level
Right.
unless they're just obviously, unless they're wealthy from the start, but that's not typical. So, I always say, let's get through these uncomfortable things together. Let's put some awesome systems into place to make it easier. And also, over time, as you get a little bit of money through that door, hire people to help you in the areas that you don't like to do.
Yeah.
If it's possible, we can just figure out how to do that. And you don't have to be rich to hire help. You can do it feasibly in small increments and slowly takes it off of your plate. It's still happening and you're still monitoring it, of course, because you're the leader here, but you don't necessarily have to do it 24/7. So if you're able to set up those systems in a smart way, and I help people do that, eventually you could hire help. And then you rock and roll, but you do have to invest in yourself as a business owner because if you don't, you're just gonna be doing everything on your own all the time forever, and, like, that's just not sustainable for long term, just keeping afloat even.
Right. And we can only wear so many hats.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
the hats start to fall off of our heads. And
Yeah,
yeah. And I've been there
same.
one too many times. But
Mhm.
how do you get somebody who, this is my craft. This is, and I'm going to go back to, let's say, making purses. Okay.
Okay.
You have this artistry, and you go out and you buy the materials and you put it together, and maybe you put it up on the marketplace and somebody buys it, and then make another one, whatever. But now you're getting so big, you need to hire help, but you don't know how to communicate with
Mhm.
other people because all you've been doing is creating um, this one thing, or numerous things. I happen to have a brother who has a lot of creative ideas, and he makes up these things and he sells it to the people around him. They all think it's wonderful, and they'll say to him, you've got to really like go out and really sell it. And he'll go, yeah, but then it takes the fun out of making it. Yeah. So, how do you help somebody who says, I wouldn't even know how to hire somebody, or how to know if I can trust them?
Mm. Those things do come up a lot, and I get it. I mean, you're starting out, it's your baby. I mean, my business is my baby. It's hard at first, but you do have to realize it's just, you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation sometimes. But to get started, first step of how to communicate with other people on getting the systems in place would be do an audit of your systems on yourself. If you are creating a radio show like you are, there are so many steps that go into that. It's not just hopping on camera.
Right.
So in order to set those up, what you could do if you're communicating and delegating this to somebody else is, okay, step 1, buy the supplies, right? Step 2, subscribe to certain platforms. Then here's where the real auditing comes in because that's probably already in place. What are you doing weekly for these different softwares? How are you updating them? Are you promoting it across social media? Are you putting it on YouTube? What are the step by steps that go into that? Are you writing a description every week? Are you getting a person's bio? All of those things, once you start doing, like, literally every tiny step onto a list, it's all about just creating a bullet list, nothing crazy. That's gonna be your first step of being able to communicate it, because then once you are ready to delegate some of these tasks, you have this list and you're like, "Oh, this is literally what I do. Here you go." But also, you coach them through it. You find the little tiny tweaks of maybe small steps you didn't write down, you add it in. And then you just update it over time. It's a very simple step, and then you can grow your team from there. And then, the next process as you evolve, write it down. Put it in a system online so that way people could just log in and see all the systems. That would be my first step. And then as far as trust goes, there are a lot of different tools. I mean, you can absolutely, micromanage at first if you have to, really just watch the steps, make sure it is going, have open communication. And as far as like sharing passwords and stuff, there's all kinds of resources like
Sure.
LastPass where you could share it and it's not giving away your password.
Well, and what I've told many people, including my brother, is that most of us have a brand of sorts that anybody else can do.
Mhm,
So we have to stop worrying who's going to steal my ideas from me. And
mhm.
I've heard this a lot, especially in the podcasting world. Oh, Karen stole my idea and look what she's doing. No, Karen didn't steal your idea. Karen had an idea. It's similar to yours. Okay. Um, the world is full of competition,
Mhm,
but you have to trust yourself
mhm,
and don't set such a lofty goal that all you're doing is looking at the brass ring and
mhm,
not doing all the steps to get there.
mhm.
Because
Exactly.
I know so many people who have said, oh, I want to have, my 5,000 subscribers on YouTube in the first 3 months. Well, good luck to that. You know,
That's hard.
exactly. So you have to set your goals to be realistic and realistic to what you're willing to put into the company as well.
Oh, yeah, 1,000,000%. And, that's the thing is in the online space, you see so many people saying, "Make $1,000,000 overnight," "Make 10K months overnight," like all these things, but how do you get to even start a business, right? So, you have to put the foundation in place and just build from there, but setting realistic goals so that way you're not crushing yourself.
Absolutely. And you have to be willing to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
You
Oh, yeah.
can't wait for everybody else to say, look what Blaire Brown is doing. That will come. But in the beginning, you had to tell people what you were doing. You
Mhm,
had to tell people, this is what I can offer you. Um,
mhm,
and I had a very dear friend who was on our show about 2 months ago.
mhm,
And she is making a lot of money in what she does and her coaching and her group sessions that she has. 5 years ago, we were at the same level. Okay.
mhm,
She's way up here. But you know what? That's okay because those are the things that she wants to do.
mhm,
And somebody said to me the other day, you know, you two are so alike, but she's there and you're here. And I said, no, in my business, I'm there,
mhm,
but we're doing it differently.
mhm.
And if I can, at the end of the day, feel satisfied with what I'm creating, then I'm successful. And I'm sure that's what you tell many of your people as well.
Oh, for sure, because nobody's path is the same. That is 1,000,000% sure. And it is hard whenever sometimes if you do see those people that might be, I'm putting this in quotes, ahead because you can't really put it in that way because you don't know how long ago they started or if they did start at the same time, like it's just different approaches and everybody has a different path in their life. So there's nothing as long as you embrace it as we're more of a look at the collaboration opportunities and supporting and cheering each other on rather than other competition, right? Like it's
Right.
going to be look at it more positively, look at what you're doing, continue to do small steps every day that add up. And then soon enough, you're going to wake up, be in that position, and there's going to be somebody else saying the same thing about you, and you don't
Ex-
even realize it.
you
And
are.
they might be right now,
Yep.
you know? It just takes a lot
Absolutely.
of courage to take those steps initially, and, I think that's something that should be celebrated.
So, how do you find your clients, or how do clients find you?
There is several ways because I'm a marketing person, so I'm everywhere. But, I'm all over social media. My handle is at Business by Blaire Brown. I have a website. One of the services I offer is SEO, which is search engine optimization. So people find us through Google. And I also have a podcast called the Curate Your Success podcast. And it's all about, it's geared towards new and aspiring entrepreneurs that want to DIY their way through entrepreneurship. And so if we can give them free resources to build up their business and inspire them by listening to other entrepreneurs that are out there doing it as well, it makes me so happy. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fun to talk to these people every day. So the Curate Your Success podcast as well. And one of the ways that I love to help people is I have a digital course, and it's called the Business Launch Lab. And what we do is we help the new entrepreneurs get started instead of, you know, all of those crazy marketing ploys that say you're gonna be a millionaire overnight. This, like, helps you get started and make your business become official. It helps set up all your branding and marketing from a foundational level, and then set up those systems that we talked about that can help you hire on a small team whenever you're short on money. So all of those things, get that entrepreneurship rolling.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is really important. If we see or hear anything that says become a millionaire in 30 days or whatever, you're only going to make that person a millionaire if you buy into their program for the most part. So there are logical things that we all need to do in business.
Mhm.
And it begins with knowing what your mission is. That's where so many of us have
Mhm.
failed in the past.
Mhm.
Back in the early 80s, I was diagnosed with chronic pain. I started a chronic
Oh.
pain organization, and that was really before everybody was on the internet doing anything. And I did my best to get it out, and I did. I
Mhm.
made lots of phone calls and wrote lots of actual snail mail letters. Um, and I was in business for 10 years. I knew what my mission was. My
Mhm.
mission was to let people know that chronic pain is real. And guess what? You're going to have to live with it. So let's
Mhm.
all learn to live with it together.
Mhm.
Um, when it became too much for me, I had to pull away from it because I was spending too much time feeling everybody else's pain.
I could see that. Yeah.
But if you don't know what your mission is, you're not going to be able to build anything.
Mhm.
And I've learned that by listening to a lot of um, your podcasts and others. And it's
Thanks.
like, see what it is. And if this is what you really want to do, then, like you said, start creating that plan how you're going to do it.
Mhm.
So give us a website where I can put it in the show notes, and everybody's going to go out there and check out Blaire Brown.
It's that simple. It's blairebrown.com, and it's Blaire spelled with an E on the end. So
Right.
blairebrown.com, you can find literally every link that I'm connected to.
Well, we certainly do appreciate your time, and um, you are a delight to have on.
Mm.
It's early in the morning here, and I feel like I could go out and run around in the park. So I actually live in the park. So
I
uh,
love that. We'll go run around in the park together, Karen.
sounds wonderful.
You're the best.
Continue to do well, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.